Hi, I'm Tim. I am the Tinkering Turtle, and in this video I'm just going to do a quick video that shows how to move the left hand thumb throttle over to the right hand side. Pretty simple process. You have to take the grips off, slide the brake handles off, unwrap the wires to get everything free. You pop the connector on the thumb throttle, you slide it off the handlebar, you pull everything off the right hand side, put everything back on. It's pretty straightforward, but I'm going to show a quick video of it for those of you that are curious and haven't ever taken grips off before. You're going to find that that's the toughest part, is getting the grips on and off. There may be an easier way, and if you do know an easier way, please leave a comment for everybody to see. I haven't done a lot of that, but I just use muscle and it works. But anyway, let's get to it. Now, for those of you who prefer the thumb throttle on the right hand versus the left hand side, what you have to do is take the grips off, which isn't always simple. Take the brake handle off and then slide that out and put the brake handle back on and the grip back on, then put it on the other side, repeating the process. And you do that by pulling out the end cap, and I just use a straight screwdriver to pull it out and get the cap off. And then sit this aside for a moment until you get ready to put it back in. Now this is the tough part, is the grip. You rotate it back and forth while giving it pressure to come off the handlebar. And this takes some hand and arm strength. It's not simple, but you can work it off. This is one thing I don't care for on the entry-level bikes, and even the higher bikes do the same thing, is they'll do these friction grips on the handlebar. I prefer to buy grips from Amazon that slide over and then have two bolts that you tighten down. They slide on easy, they slide off easy, plus they bolt on so they never move. When you get them into the position that you want, then you simply tighten them down and they stay there. So that's one pretty inexpensive upgrade that you might want to consider, is those can be $10 to $20. You know, they're not expensive, and you can get ergonomic ones. I'll find a link and throw something in the description of the video in case you want to look at them. But that's how you get this off. You just work it off. And that's how you take that off. Then you take a 5mm Allen wrench and you loosen up the bolt that holds the brake on. Now what I'm seeing here is the wrapping on these wires are stopping it from coming off, so I'm going to have to unwrap the wires. You got to be careful not to pull, and because there's a plug-in for the back of the controller, and you don't want to bend that or pull it out the wrong way, because you could really mess up your connection there. So be careful when you're doing this type of stuff. Make sure you're not pulling on more than the wire you want. And since I'm moving the throttle to the other side of the bike, I'm going to have to redo the connection and run it up this other run anyway. Got that all the way off. So the throttle wire comes down to this connector. These are water resistant connectors that you pull straight apart. You do not twist these connectors. You pull them straight apart. There's typically 2 or 3 pins depending on what connector you're talking about, and you don't want to bend those pins over. They're small and they're fairly delicate. They do have arrows on each of the connectors to line up so you know where to put it back together, and there's a key and slot in there as well that you can line up. But pull these straight apart. Little snap. It's a 3-pin connector. There's a little key here and a little slot here. And that's how you disconnect it. Let me see if I can get this out without taking any more wire apart. There you go. So the brake's off. Okay, up underneath the thumb throttle there's a 3mm Allen bolt. You just loosen that up and you can slide the throttle. Loosen it up a little bit more. and you have to kind of work this off. And there's your throttle. Now once you've got the throttle off, you can go ahead and put your brake handle back on. Again, be careful with your wire routing so you don't pull something out. You want to slide that back down. And then you'll put your handle back on, and it's just reversing the process and getting that pushed all the way on. This is kind of a pain in the butt part because this takes a little bit of effort to get on. You're just twisting it back and forth, forcing it in. It's tight. Okay, you want to do it until the metal part is right at the end. Then you'll take your plug that you pulled out and it just press fits back in. And you want to make sure when you sit on it to rotate these so that they're at the same level. Now once you've got this back on, then you bring your brake handle out and you'll sit on the bike and adjust the angle of it like this to where it matches the other side. Remember, I haven't taken this one off and adjusted it, so I want to get them identical. I'll tighten this one down, then when I put this one over here back on, I can make it match. So once I get it to where I want it, I just hold it in place and I snug up the bolt on the bottom. That's a 5mm. And double check it, make sure it's exactly where I want it. Now the screen is a little bit loose, but you can also loosen it up. I think that one also takes a 3mm. But I'm going to slide it out close to the handle and I'm going to aim it back so it's more square to where I'm looking. And I tend to leave these loose, and the reason I do that is if you do wreck, you don't want your controller to get smashed up, so you want it to be able to flex and move out of the way. So I tend to leave this a little loose. Just tighten it up enough where it doesn't move while you're riding when you're hitting bumps. It just kind of stays in place. Well, that's smaller than a 3. That's a 2.5. Again, don't over tighten it. Those tend to be plastic connections and you don't need it to be super tight. Now that I've been messing with the cables, I want to double check and make sure the cables over here aren't binding up in any way. And once I've verified that, then I'll go ahead and put the wrapping back on. There, the wrapping's back on. Now I'll repeat the process on the other side. I'll pull the cap, I'll pull the grip, I'm going to unwrap it, I'll pull the handle off, I'll slide the thumb throttle on, I'll put the handle back on, I'll adjust everything in so I can get the grip back on, and then I'll rewrap it. It's pretty simple, it's just a matter of doing the work. Okay, you got your thumb throttle here. You're going to want to loosen up your shifter and slide it in. Your brake handle and slide it in. Actually, your brake handle I want to take off and put the thumb throttle between the shifter and the brake handle, I think. And that's just a good distance for my thumb to get to. So the brake handle, I'm going to want to turn the bike so I got as much slack in that cable as possible. Get that off. And then the shifter takes a Phillips head screwdriver and you slide that in, tighten it back down. And you can fine-tune adjust these when you put the grip back on. Now the thumb throttle, a little bit of resistance. It's got something in there that's scratching it. What I tend to do with the thumb throttle is I put the lever down at about a 45 degrees. And the reason I do that is then when you push it, it's a good for my thumb. I like this coming down about 45 degrees from horizontal. And that seems to work out best for me. So let me grab that Allen wrench. I'm just going to lightly snug that up so it's not moving. I want to put my brake handle back on. And then I'm going to take and I'm going to measure and just make sure I'm at about the right spot for the length of my grip. And I am. And then I'm just going to gauge this by looking over there. I'll tighten it up a little bit and then make a fine-tune adjustment after I'm done. So just a light snug. I'll set the bike up and that's at the right angle. So you typically want the brake handles going slightly down. And then I'll tighten up the thumb throttle and the gear shift right now just to make sure that I don't forget later. That's nice and tight. Double check my shifter. That's nice and tight. Okay, so now I want to take the connector for the throttle and the connector for the throttle here, and I want to line up the slot and the key in the connector. And there's arrows also on the connector itself that you can look for. You need those lined up and make sure you push them straight together. Otherwise you might mess up the pins. And then just like you did on this side, you'll rewrap them. Okay, and as before, double check your cable run, make sure you're not binding up as you turn. You can make fine-tuned adjustments to this after you get the grip back on, but I think they're in a pretty good spot, so I don't know that I'm going to have to. But let's get the grip put back on. And I'm sure there's some sort of lubricant you can use to get this on and off, but you don't want to use a lubricant that stays lubed. You want something that'll evaporate off, because you don't want this to be lubricated as you're riding, because the grip can turn then. You don't want it to turn. This is why I don't like these grips. I like grips that you can actually bolt on, slide on and off easy. They're just better, and they don't cost that much. Okay, now that I've got the grips back on and lined up with the other one, I've double checked the brake handles. I just have to put the cap in the end. And I'm all set. Now I've got the throttle over on the right hand side, which is my preferred. This is a preference only type situation. You don't have to move the thumb throttle over. It's just something I wanted to do because all my bikes are left hand thumb throttles. If you have any questions or concerns about what you've seen here today, throw a comment in the comment section below and I'll get back to you right away. Otherwise, I will catch you next time. Have a great day. As a bonus for this video, I'm going to talk about putting in a bar end mirror, because one of the things you want when you have any bike, in my mind, is a mirror so you can see behind you. A lot of people will use a mirror. They'll use some sort of video setup where they hook it to the back of the seat and they get a rear view camera type thing. I tend to use the bar end mirrors that go in the end of the handlebars. I think they work fine. I can glance down and see who's behind me. That's much safer than actually turning your head and looking behind you, because when you do that, you naturally tend to steer your bike to the left or to the right, depending on which way you look. So I'm a big fan of mirrors. I think they're an essential safety item. And today we're going to install the bar end mirror on the Core5. So what you're going to find in the box is the mirror. I tend to use the larger one. I think it's 68 millimeters. Can't remember for sure. I will put a link to the mirror in the description of the video. It comes with its own Allen wrench, and you'll need a straight screwdriver to pop out the cap on the end of the handlebars. The process is pretty straightforward. I use a straight screwdriver to get down in behind the cap and get it started coming out. You'll pre-assemble the parts. The nut goes in this little black cap, and then it's got this sleeve that expands inside the handlebars. It'll expand to fit in here, and you'll have a single Allen bolt that you'll tighten it up. It'll pull this end down in, expanding the center section to fill up that area. Now I'm going to have to figure out the best way So I'll just kind of get it preset to where I think it's going to be. And then I'll move the mirror out of the way and I'll tighten the Allen bolt to snug it up in that position. And then when you're sitting on your bike, you can adjust it so you can look down and see behind you. And the only thing left to do after that is to peel the plastic and stuff off the mirror, give it a little polish. The installation's just that simple. It works well, it stays out of the way, and if you're going through a doorway and you need to make the handlebars smaller, you simply just fold it in, then fold it back out when you go for a ride again. Just that easy. I will put a link to the mirror in the description of the video if you want it.